right now from the former Israeli military spokesperson, retired Israeli Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus. He's also a senior fellow right now at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Jonathan, thanks so much for joining us. As you know, President Trump told reporters on the way here to Israel aboard Air Force One that the war is over. Do you believe the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, thinks President Trump is wrong? Does the IDF think the war is now over?
Good morning to you, Wolf. Good to see you again on this happy day. I wouldn't want to defy any American president, and definitely not President Trump, but I would say that I see this, and I think many would share it, I see it as a ceasefire and a very important milestone, getting the hostages back. But as long as Hamas exists, as long as they have weapons, and as long as they control the Gaza Strip, then this is very little more than a ceasefire. When Hamas is dismantled of its weapons, when they no longer can threaten Israelis, when they cannot do October 7 or anything like it again, then the war will be over.
Yeah, I think it's one thing to have a ceasefire, as you correctly point out, Jonathan. It's another thing to have the war completely over. And certainly the Prime Minister of Israel isn't suggesting the war is over. He's suggesting that Israel still needs to continue its efforts to make sure that Hamas no longer poses any threat to Israel. What do you see happening next?
Well, hopefully today will be concluded around noontime, a little bit more, with 20 live hostages. Hamas has published the names of the live hostages that they intend to return, and they match our lists, of course. And then the 28 bodies, or the remains of 28 murdered Israeli hostages. I understand that there will be a single-digit amount of remains of hostages that will not be transferred today, and then that will be carried over to that joint group of Israel, Qatar, Turkey, and Hamas, and of course with U.S. Intermediary functions. And then we will begin the search for those remains of the final remains of a few of the other murdered hostages. And today, if everything goes according to plan, and I believe it will, I think today will be a very important milestone, and we can check the most sensitive part of getting the deal started. What follows will be much more difficult, and it'll, I think, take time and require a lot of diplomatic and military skill, and that is to get Hamas to disarm. Hamas won't disarm easily, and there will have to be significant pressure from Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey for them to do so. Otherwise, it's great that we get the hostages back, but as you said before, the war won't be over because Hamas will still be a threat. So first things first, we're very happy and excited to get the hostages back, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
The ceasefire, Jonathan, seems to be holding. That's encouraging. The hostages are about to be handed over to Israel through the International Red Cross. That's also very encouraging. What worries you most about the coming days? Potentially things could collapse.
Yeah, they're now in the hands. 7 Israeli hostages in the northern part of the Gaza Strip are in the hands of the Red Cross, en route to Israeli hands, IDF hands. So that's great. What worries me is Hamas retribution, that they will continue to execute Palestinians in Gaza. That's one issue which I think we should be following closely. Second is, if Hamas continue to refuse to hand over weapons and disarm, that will not spell well for the future. And third, and I think less likely given the sensitive situation, if Hamas tries to attack Israeli troops and to do something that would violate the ceasefire inside the Gaza Strip. Currently, I don't see them benefiting from it. I think they have bigger fish to fry in the sense of not wanting to let go of their arms. And I think that is where the focus should be. And I hope that today in Sharm el-Sheikh, President Trump will lead, together with Arab countries, really in a swift transition, as seamless as possible and as peaceful as possible transition from the terror regime of Hamas to some other local and international reign over the Gaza Strip and Palestinians, the faster, the better. The longer time it gets to transition will mean more retribution by Hamas, more difficulties, and more, I would say, uncertainty on the Israeli side that the deal is really going to happen and that Hamas is really going to be relegated to history and Israel will be safe.
Yeah, and the President Trump has been working with several European allies as well as Arab countries and Muslim countries to create a new peacekeeping force in effect in Gaza to help make sure all this works out. Jonathan Conricus, retired Israeli lieutenant colonel, former spokesperson for the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, thanks so much for joining us once again.